Hi, my name is Isabella Johnston, and I am the Intern Whisperer. And today's tip of the week is about multi-generational culture. You want to avoid stereotypes and ageism. The most common traps that you need to avoid when managing a multi-generational workforce are these stereotypes. Unfortunately, it's all too easy to stereotype, and it doesn't help that there are many stereotypes floating around about different generations. The truth is, you can't stick the same label on different employees just because they belong to one generation, whether it's baby boomers or if it's Gen Z or millennials or Gen Y. In the same vein, you should avoid ageism, which refers to any thought patterns, prejudices, or actions towards a person that are solely motivated by the age factor. Welcome to the Intern Whisperer, Birgitta Irblich. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I love your hat.
Thank you.
Super cool. It's going to be part of the story, I'm going to guess.
I just love close hats.
Oh, wow. That looks great. Okay. So one of the things that I do with all of my guests is I ask them to say 5 words that they use to describe them. It lets our listeners know a little bit more about you, about how you got started and how you see yourself and what it is, the value you have to bring to others. But why those 5 words? So what are your words? And you can go in any order.
Well, we'll start with the 5 words. I guess holistic would definitely be top of my mind. And I'm determined and caring, very caring. I'm an explorer and I have integrity.
Those are really good words. And I like them because I've never had anybody say explorer. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that word. So holistic, and I've never had anybody say holistic, but I know the story about that. So why did you pick the word holistic?
It's just who I am. And it's what I believe in. So I'm very passionate about living a holistic life. And I also believe that it has a lot to do with education and how our brains work and things of that nature. So yeah, holistic is it's who I am.
Mm-hmm. The goal is always to educate some of our listeners, and sometimes we have young ones that are listening to us. So how would you define holistic for them?
So it's a lot about, it's everything all in together, right? So think of whole more like with a W as opposed to an H. So we're spelling it incorrectly, I know, but think of it as the whole person. So it's everything around you, in you, your thoughts, your the foods you eat, everything.
Spiritual, physical,
it can be spiritual,
emotional,
absolutely,
mental,
and it's different for every person. But definitely it also goes into the way that I care for myself medically. So I choose more of the non-traditional ways, acupuncture or massage or things of that nature, Reiki and things that are non-traditional, more Eastern as opposed to Western.
Okay. So I was at Podfest this weekend and so were you.
Yes, I was.
There was a Reiki. Am I saying it right? Reiki. There was a Reiki podcast and I really don't know a whole lot about it. And some of our listeners won't either. What is Reiki?
So I'm not an expert in Reiki, but it has to do with, it's pressure points and things like that. But I'm definitely not an expert on that. I did go to at podcast, the Red Tent experience. That was very nice. It's kind of put a mood with going through a meditation first and centering the mind. And that was really excellent. I also went to that same person's training, or I should say talk, and she talked about the energy of the room, how to read energy in the room. So it's all that. It's what people call woo-woo stuff, but it's not.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So you said explorer. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about an explorer.
I love to travel. I love to experience. I love to learn. So when I go places, I am always wanting to dive into wherever I'm at. I don't want to go necessarily to the touristy places. I'd rather go where the locals go. What do they eat? What are they wearing? The music they listen to. I like to just explore, like literally just walk and discover.
I love that. Okay. So caring, I
Mhm.
would use that word to describe you. Yes.
Yes. So I cannot help but care for people. I will always put others before myself, especially children. I cannot help myself. It's just who I am. I can't turn it off. So
Do you have children?
No, I
That's
do
okay.
not.
Neither do I, but I can tell you, I absolutely love them. I teach Sunday school with 3-year-olds. That's like my favorite age.
Mhm.
So I get what you're saying there. That's okay too. Determined.
So I don't tend to give up too easily. I am very determined to when I set my mind to something, that's it. I am going full force and I'm going to go to whatever that thing is that I'm going to. So I'm determined to not give up.
And then your last one is integrity.
Well, yes, that's a kind of a thing that doesn't really exist much. I find nowadays a lot of people don't have integrity. But I just, what I say, what I'm going to do, or I should say, I do what I say I'm going to do, right? And it's got a lot of other words attached to it, like trust and honesty. I mean, these are things that I just find lacking in today's society.
Values.
They are
right?
valued. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I experienced last week, during Podfest while we were away at that, gentleman that I've been doing some business with. I'm not going to go into too many details. Originally, I was going to sell something and it was $10,000. And because, I wasn't able to complete the transfer of the organization and dealing with the IRS, it was like, okay, well, you might only be able to do it for this price. And I went, you know what? That's fine. Just go ahead. He reached out and he said, well, you've been doing all of the work on this. He said, so we want to pay you as a consultant. And so we're going to do this price. It went up a whole nother level. And he said, I'm going to try and get the whole value, full value. And I said, wow. He said, you got to do what the right thing is to do. And so it comes back to that word that you were just describing, integrity. And he said, it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can respect that a lot for sure. So where did you go to school? College, it can be high school, but if you didn't go to college, it would definitely be high school. But where did you go to college and how did you end up where you are today? Because it's the journey and people love hearing the journey because you're going to see that people will resonate a lot with those 5 words, but also with your story.
So my my story sometimes makes me cringe.
I love my story.
Yeah, so I went to school and was born and raised in Canada.
You don't have any Canadian accent.
Hey.
There you go. There's the word.
But I have European parents. So I wasn't living in a home that had that Canadian kind of a
Influence?
Yeah, right. Because my influence was European. So I didn't really have that. But when I came to the United States in the mid 1990s, I went ahead and had my schooling, if you will, evaluated by Joseph Silney Associates, and they do colleges and universities explaining, international
Credentialing, is
yes.
it?
Well, just explaining what it is you have in the American equivalency.
Oh, okay.
And so it ended up I had 2 AS degrees. I had one in recreation leadership and one in early childhood education. The early childhood education one is the one where I've spent a good 30 years of my life because I'm very, very passionate about how children are raised and how the schooling system is, or maybe it should not be. And yeah, so I don't necessarily agree with the schooling system. And so I'm very, very passionate about that. And
You mean like more of the mainstream traditional public schools,
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with how things are done. I mean, it's centuries old and times have changed and things have changed. So yeah.
Yeah, it was there when we were looking at how we would create that accelerated method of delivering education to the masses. and they were creating production lines and all different types of ways of improving processes. And so it did serve that purpose at that point in time, take you out of the one school with all of the grades together. But you're right. And now the world has changed again, and we're working remotely, and we're not in traditional schools anymore. And how do we look at education? It's very different.
It is very different. And we need to move with the times.
So. Part of what being in school is, I believe it's socialization, so that children will learn how to share, how to not use their fists or their feet, learn the art of negotiation.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are key, and learn how to manage emotions.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that all has to be done at a very young age.
And we have that window, right?
Yeah, there's a window that goes from like 3 to 7-ish. And that is when the brain is developing those social and emotional and cognitive parts of the brain. And that's what we should be focusing on during those years.
I agree. Yeah. And we know that children are like sponges.
Oh, yes.
And they absorb, they see everything, they're listening, they say things that we may, as parents or people of influence in their lives, regret saying. Yeah. Anyway, so you went to school, you went to college, and it was early childhood education. So what did you do with that?
So while I was going through that, I just, like I said, I had this passion for that age group, especially of 3 to 5. Because it's such a critical time frame. And I did a lot of studying and a lot of reading because I was so just amazed at the brain. I did a lot of brain study, and I ended up designing my own school, like on how I feel it should be done. And I didn't design just a preschool. On paper, I did everything from conception to the end of high school. And I've got it all written out.
So when you say conception, you don't mean conception of the idea, you mean from conception of a child.
Yes. So I have an idea of how, it starts right from the parents
while the child's in the womb.
Yep. It starts right then, and it begins then. Yeah.
So go ahead and expand on that. What was your creative process there? How did you envision it? And then tell us about the school.
So the school is no more. Like I did have the school, but I don't have the school anymore. So it started out with 20 years of just studying and writing and figuring out at what age certain things should happen. And I'm not going to go through the whole entire thing.
Sure.
But to give you an idea, I had it broken down in pods, if you will, of it was almost like 3 or 4 years together at a time. So it's not divided by an age, because you can't say someone is, 6 years old or whatever and has to be in grade 1, because there is a range. Every child is different, right? And so if you have them grouped together instead of a few different ages together, then it's going to let everyone develop at their own rate. And this way, if someone is a little bit behind, it doesn't matter. And if
social learning.
Exactly. And if someone's a little bit ahead, it doesn't matter, because the ones that are ahead, they're not going to get bored and be troublemakers as they sometimes get labeled. They instead will become helpers, and they will get involved with, because they know more, so they'll want to help their peers. And the ones that may be struggling a bit, they benefit from that. So everybody wins in that kind of environment. And so it was broken down that way in groups, as opposed to singular years.
That reminds me of the traditional old school, where it was all of the ages together in one school building.
Yes.
I'm going back to some of my favorite books, Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah. Pick any of those. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Traditional old schoolhouse. Yeah. Yeah. So nice. So you said that you took it all the way up to high school. So are you still grouping kids together based
Yes.
on abilities? It sounds like abilities, capabilities.
So when they're younger, they're all grouped by age anyways, but when they were younger, the focus is a little different. But then when they're older, they're more choosing things that interest them because that's a better learning environment. So they're not being forced to take something that's not going to serve them later in life. So, and then plus there's more.
But can you give us some examples? Because I've been at your school. I remember your school. That's how we met.
Yes.
But you had different stations set up in the school.
Yes. So at the preschool level, it is more about learning how to control yourself and resilience and emotions. But that doesn't mean they're not learning other things. They're still learning about maths and sciences and we had a garden outside. They were learning about growing and patience because things take time to grow, and then they'd pick it, then they'd eat it. And so it was just a lot more different and slower in a way at the child's pace, not at the instructor's pace. So this way there's no frustration and things of that nature. Yeah.
It sounds like, it reminds me of, I had a different client also. She was in fashion, and there was fast fashion and slow fashion. And so I'm equating it to the pace of life and understanding, I'm going to use one of your words again, connecting to what is really happening in life. So it's a mindful experience. And if I'm using your example, I'm looking at how something, I plant the seed, I'm watching the process to see how the plant grows. I can then nurture it, pick it, clean it, eat it. It's the full cycle.
The full cycle. And that includes everything, not just with the garden outside, but even when it came time, for example, in preschool, they usually have a snack. It wasn't just brought to them. They were involved with the creation of it. So they knew what was in it. They knew what things were that an average person may not know. They knew what a chia seed was. Like they knew, they just knew what stuff was. And they knew that if something had protein, or if it had, it's just because you talk about it. They're you said, they're sponges, right? They can pick up on all this stuff and they learn, and we shouldn't treat them like they can't. They know a lot more than we give them credit for.
Yeah. I find that true about even adults, because I've worked a lot of my life also in adult learning. And I think that many adults, they lose that propensity to engage that childlike wonder and curiosity.
Yeah.
And if they allow that to bubble back up, they can actually experience it and be connected, like what you're saying, to what is really going on to another person.
Absolutely. And it is interesting when you give them that opportunity, because we also taught them about emotions. So they could now recognize other emotions in their friends at such a young age. And they knew when it was okay to, maybe I shouldn't, let that person have their space because they need their space, or that person does want me to be near them. They can learn those things. So.
Yeah, I remember there was a place in your school where the child could go and sit
and breathe,
and they could turn the sign to indicate what their emotion was when they were in that little protective space.
Yeah, it was their safe space. And the breathing exercises were very important because it helped regulate themselves. And everybody else knew that child needed their space, so they stayed out of their space and no one got hurt. Right?
Yeah. So. I'd love the fact that it could stop school fights. I taught high school and middle school. It would be nice if because your hormones are racing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Being able to be in control of that. That would be wonderful. So what was the name of this wonderful school?
So I actually named it after my parents. So I had named it, it is my name, Irblich Schools, but I had named it after my parents. That was the whole point of it. And I never created it for anything except to put it out in the world and to go forward beyond my life. It was never intended really for anything else. I just wanted to set a better system out there and get it going. So, yeah,
there were a lot of parents that like your method. It reminded me a lot of Montessori type, but it was an elevation.
It was a combination. There was some Montessori in it. There was some Waldorf, which is another style in it. There was
You'll have to explain that one too.
They're just all different styles of teaching. It takes a long time to explain all the
That's
different
okay.
styles of teaching. But what it's basically, I combined all these different styles that are out there, but I mixed them up and added my own little secret sauce, if you will. So it had a little bit of those other kind of alternative versions that are out there, but they weren't cut and dry to their way. It still left room for growth, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I like that they're very experiential.
yeah.
So cool. So you're very entrepreneurial. What other types of businesses or industries, sectors have you been in?
So surprisingly, before I started Irblich Schools, I was already practicing my sales skills, and I was and still am an associate for an organization called Legal Shield, and that is providing affordable access to lawyers, which all of us need in today's day and age. So I got a lot of practice of business skills, sales skills, and things of that nature from that, which I then used into the school. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Is there any other ventures that you have dipped your toe into?
Not quite yet.
I thought I remember you also doing something with, was it aromatherapy or something?
So I did aromatherapy in the school.
Ah, yeah.
So in the school, the environment was very important, and how the whole emotion and everything of the environment was. So I had aromatherapy going throughout the school to create moods, and I would change it at nap time.
Oh, really? Okay. So what was the nap time experience?
So the nap time was also the child choosing, right? So we wouldn't make them do anything. If they wanted to be awake, that's fine. They just had to learn to be quiet. So they had to practice quiet skills, reading a book, playing with a puzzle, anything that was quiet. Yeah.
And not disturbing their neighbors.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So they weren't forced to do anything.
So what I love about aromatherapy is the ability, it uses a lot of scents that tap into releasing stress, but also energy.
Yes.
So citrus or lemons and oranges were
brighten the room.
Yeah, they always felt really good and fresh. I think it's lavender is what's used
Relaxing.
for. Yeah. I don't know what frankincense is for.
Can't remember either.
That's the spicy one. So yeah, but I found that one really, really nice also. It was kind of like a patchouli.
Yeah.
And those were lovely, lovely scents. So you don't have that business any longer?
No. Unfortunately, I that saying, location.
Yes. Yeah.
I had the wrong location.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. But the products themselves were super. And I remember that also. So anyway, you have had your fingers and toes dipped in a lot of those areas. And there's always a takeaway that we can gain from. I've done the same thing. I've sold books. I've sold different types of makeup or skincare products. I've sold, I was going to do Pampered Chef even at one point in time, but there's like a lot of things that I've done as side products. Trying to figure it out during that time. And what I decided to do was to focus on business plans, things that are always about educating. And that's where, my intern pursuit, which is now Employers for Change, came out of. But you are an instructional designer. So you made a complete shift into it but I think it's true to who you are, to be honest. You're an educator.
Yeah.
I would pick that word to describe you.
It's hard to get away from who you are.
Yeah.
So when I closed the school, I needed to step away from what I've been doing for the past, 20, 30 years. So I needed to do something different, but I still needed to do education. So I ended up in the adult field, which I had never considered before or thought about before. I didn't even know what an instructional designer was. I didn't even know it was a profession. So I started out as a facilitator, teaching, corporately, but then from there was led into the instructional world.
Yeah, it's so beautiful because we were talking about that with a previous guest, a couple of them, what an instructional designer is. And for any new listeners that are coming in, they're the ones that create that content.
Online training.
Yes. And they start with a pre-test, normally the training modules, a post-test, and make some recommendations of some follow-up activities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a certain level of art skills, because if you're designing, it's not just the curriculum, right?
I'm not a graphic designer, so when I want to confuse that, I'm the one that puts it together. So I write a script according to whatever needs to be done, and I do the audio of the script, but I put icons or images that are pre-done. I'm not drawing or designing anything, but I make them move so that it's interesting. So they come in and go out or whatever.
Yeah,
spin
some
or whatever.
animations, transitions.
Yeah.
I can do some of that in PowerPoint. Thank goodness PowerPoint is such a good tool for that. But it's like I'm not a graphic designer. I learn a lot from graphic designers.
Yeah, I'm not a graphic designer, but I too have learned a lot about layout from them and colors and spacing, but I'm not a graphic designer.
Have you ever used Canva?
I've heard of Canva, haven't used it.
Super easy.
What I use is called Articulate. So I use Storyline 360 and Rise 360, which is basically PowerPoint on some major steroids.
It's definitely for people that are instructional designers. I know that. That is for sure, because it allows you to add, the music and, lay your voice track over it and do so much with it. So the Canva, what's really nice is if you're not an artist, which I am not, I want to be, but I can create some beautiful graphics and I lay those on top of my slides and it looks like it's totally more than clip art, which is what I'm usually using.
Right.
So I can say, hey, you might want to try your hand at that one too, because you can download them and put them really on some beautiful PowerPoints. So I love the fact that you've been in again with adult learners. Tell me what your observations are about the difference between adult learners and how you see children. I know I mentioned a couple of things, but what are your thoughts?
It is quite different. If I have my druthers, I prefer the children.
Sure.
And it's just because they are more open and they don't have a lot of baggage. And when you're teaching, they're so wanting it. With adults, quite often it's because they have to, or they don't really want to. They're thinking about their grocery list. They're thinking about what they're going to do next. Their attention span is surprisingly shorter than children.
Yeah. And typically one of the things I remember in my education courses, it said that a child, their attention span is 1 minute for every year they are, up to about, they said like 10, and then you can kind of expand it a little bit more. I think it was even 6 really. With adults in my adult education classes, they said 45 minutes. With the pace of technology and how people consume information, I don't think 45 minutes is the attention span any longer.
No, you have to do it in bite-sized pieces. So even when I'm creating trainings, even if I have a big topic, I will break it down into little micro topics so that they're just getting what they need and then they can take that moment of break. Okay, then they can get what they need.
So how long do you plan it for? 2 minutes, 5?
It depends on the topic, but yes, I'll keep it within 5. 5 is about as far as I really like to go, because beyond that, I've lost them.
Oh yeah.
So
I think at PodFest where we were, I think that in one of the conferences, and I say I think because there was I went to
there was a lot.
There was so much.
Yeah.
But people make decisions in the first 10 seconds, I think is what I heard. And just by watching on either the video, because a lot of podcasts are video, if they're going to go yes or no.
That's correct.
Which is the magic of TikTok. Have you thought about using any TikTok type of, how the videos are they jump a lot instead of being a smooth video, where, it's seamless and the messaging is all there. Part of the, I guess, the intrigue, the value of TikTok is it is, I
Raw.
call them jump cuts.
I was going to
Actually,
say it's just raw.
well, they actually make it, according to what I've been reading, is it's not like raw video, but they take, just chunk it, and then they make it seem that there's a gap, a jump cut, if you will, so that it's connecting and it keeps you more interested because of that break between the content. I find it very distracting for myself, but I guess it's really appealing to a, more of like Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Probably because I am not a TikTok person. So.
They're pretty interesting to watch, though.
I've seen some and they're hilarious,
Yeah.
but I'm not really into it, though.
Yeah. Definitely, it's there. So, once you've done all of this in the education realm, let's go back to Irblich schools and talk about that a little bit more. You had it all the way going up to high school. What was on paper? Okay. So tell us more about the school and what ages you were working with there.
So when I had the school open, I started with where my degree was, which is early childhood. So that I only was focusing at first with the 3 to 5s, which is that first pod, which is so that all those 3s and 4s and 5s were all together, right? They weren't separated into separate little rooms, which makes no sense to me. But anyways, so I had all 3 of them together and they grew together and they got to stay with their friends longer and they built relationships that were stronger. And
how would that have worked for like elementary school? Like what levels pods would stay together?
Is it about every 3 years?
Every 3. So it would have been 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, I could see that. And honestly, schools in the Midwest are set up 10th grade through 12th, but they're still separate grades. Middle school in the Midwest, which is different from here, was 7, 8, 9. They were together. And so then they had everything else underneath.
But were they together in the same room or just together in the same building, but still separated
together
by
in the
age?
same building, put together in, put into ability levels and into grades, grade 7. So they would put ability levels, meaning honors, gifted, honors, standard, and then also at risk, or they called them basic, kids that were definitely at risk. Now, if they had put them together based on abilities all into one classroom, that would have been very different. That's really, when you have that many kids and you're talking thousands of kids in a school, 1 to 2,000, it's pretty hard to put them all together like that. But if you had put the ability levels together, it might have been just like what you were describing, the more accelerated, progressed students would be able to help the ones that were lagging.
Sure. And don't forget too, that when they get into that high school range, I had them more choosing where they wanted to go. So
like based on interests?
Like so if they want to take German or Spanish or French, right? Like so that they could pick their language and they could pick, auto shop and actually learn how to change a tire and, all these other things. But so they could pick and choose and learn things as opposed to being told you have to take chemistry or you have to take algebra. Why?
Yeah, I didn't experience that, at least not down here. I was able to pick my classes regardless. If I had to take a math, for example,
of course,
I could pick the math, whatever type of math I wanted. My parents had some, obviously some input on that. Input, yeah. And my dad was a math person, so of course, that was important. If we were on the track for college, there was recommendations,
of course,
as to what we should take too.
And you should take things that are going to go towards what your interests are and where they're going to lead, because you're going to do better that way.
Yeah. And we also, at the time here, the high schools here in Florida were offering shop, like what you were describing. They had driver's ed.
Oh, that's good.
They had, it's called food preparation, not
nutrition.
It could be nutrition also. They had different names for it than home economics, which I was born in Kansas. So, you know, that area of the world had a different name. It wasn't called nutrition or food preparation. It was home economics. So basic life skills, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was nice. Anyway, going back to that, I love the fact that your school, as I mentioned earlier, it was just very innovative.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully you're going to bring that back at some point in time.
So if the opportunity was to present itself and timing was looking good, and
an investor maybe.
Well, yeah, I definitely would revisit it, because I
think this is even the time for something.
It's
like
not
that.
finished. It's just not finished. There's so much to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, we're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, and then we will be right back.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
And now we are back to our show. So in this part of our show, we talk about the future of jobs and industries in 2030. So what are your thoughts about COVID and the impact that it's had on jobs and just the future? We also look at it going into 2030. What are your thoughts?
Well, 2030 is not that far away. Let's just focus on that first of all.
It's 8 years.
Right, exactly.
And 7.5.
COVID for me was very interesting. And I want to mention the experience that I had, because prior to COVID, where I was working was already beta testing working remotely. So it was already a thing kind of that we were trying out. We were doing Adobe Connect, to try with the facilitators to do online training. So we were beta testing it. It had already been going for, oh gosh, not a year, but several months. We'd already been beta testing. So then when all of a sudden, bam, everyone had to go home, it wasn't so bad because we'd already been testing and trying stuff out. So for us, it worked out okay. And all of the modules that were being facilitator led now had to be put into modules online. So I never lost work, whereas I know a lot of people did, but I had more work than I did before COVID hit. And so I've been crazy busy trying to get everything done. So I've had some pretty good job security being an instructional designer.
I would think so. This particular industry, it's one of the things that I have researched and studied. It's part of my business model, is just massive. The growth opportunity and the demand for customized, we're going to call it customized, more of a customized learning approach, is just off the charts. It is just like online recruiting. And now with the ability to have more of a customized learning experience, it's not going to stop. So you are in a very good position.
I agree.
Now. Yeah,
I agree. It's a very needed industry.
And I know that was one of the things that I had said to employers and schools before COVID hit. I said, oh, we need to be doing remote internships. And they would the people at the schools would go, no, that's not what we're going to do. And even some employers, but things have changed. And now everybody's going, oh yeah, I guess it's possible.
But let's not forget Disney, right? Yep. When you went into the big Epcot ball and that tour, the tomorrow, whatever it was, they had that ride. They had all these children in front of screens going all, from place to place to place. So here we are.
Yep. Virtual reality, augmented reality. Yep. It's totally there. So remote, blended, on-site, flexible work. We've touched about it. What is your preference?
So I do like a mix personally because it is nice to still have a little bit of that human, every once in a while, connection, but that human connection can be more on the fun side of things too. So you can definitely teach online, like for example with Adobe Connect, which is what we've been using. The facilitators, they're there, they're talking to their people, everyone's on camera, but you also are losing a little bit of reading body language. There's some other things that are going on that you're missing out on. So it'd be nice if there could be some blend. But here's what I really, really like about having an instructional designed module. See, when I was a facilitator, there was 4 of us in the corporate world. We had 4 different trainers, and there wasn't consistency because we all had our own way of teaching.
Sure.
We all had our own kind of methods
and
and
personality too.
Absolutely. And so when the people came, when new hires came out of class, they weren't always all the same because they didn't always get all the same information. Now, when you have a module, you are guaranteed the same content. However, there's still perception, right? Not everyone perceives the information the same way, but you've got a much better chance of people coming out with the right information with a module that's been properly worded, vetted, whatever you want to say. You've got a better chance of outputting good students.
Yep, I agree. It's just like when I go into any type of facilitating a workshop or a corporate retreat, if I do those or in my own courses that I design, you always have to get everybody with a definition, make sure we're all on the same page, and then you're moving them forward so that we can address any questions, concerns, but the concepts are uniform. Yeah, definitely. I personally, I get my energy from being around people. So I found it really hard to be in a situation where I was interacting with people just solely online.
Yeah.
I also have to have a separation between where I sleep and live and where I work.
Sure.
And I did not like that at all. It felt like prison to me.
Wow.
And I'm an extroverted personality, so I get more energy from others.
And it's funny because if someone would have asked me pre-COVID to work from home, I probably would have said no, because I do like being around people very much so. But I also found that once I went home, I learned some new things. I was more productive than I'd ever been. There was less distractions. I didn't hear people talking over the cubicle. There weren't people coming in and bugging me. There wasn't phones and noises and all these kinds of things. I actually produce more now than I did before. And I wouldn't have known that unless I experienced it. So I'm getting more sleep because now that drive time is no longer there. So I have found I'm eating better because I have a kitchen nearby, right? I can have proper food as opposed to a bag lunch. So I have found, surprisingly,
your work-life balance is better.
It's more of a life-work balance.
Yeah.
I have a better life working from home, and I have no intentions of going back to an office.
That's the best piece of advice I've heard for the whole year. I like the fact that you flipped it. So it was life work instead of work life, because your focus is totally shifted.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm happier. I'm healthier.
Yeah. Okay. I'm envious, but that's okay. I still like being in the office though, for sure. I need that separation, and I definitely recognized it. What do you think about robots, AI, artificial intelligence, obviously, augmented virtual realities? What do you think about all of those?
So,
and how do you see that moving into 2030? More of it? What do you think it's going to look like? And what else? I'm going to throw one more question on top of the heap. What do you think an instructional designer's job might look like in 2030? I'm thinking it's not going to be PowerPoint anymore. I think we're going to be watching things like maybe with Google Glass, or it's going to be like just displaying on maybe a pin that's up here on a wall, and it's going to be more immersive than ever.
Sure. And it is going to that point where you have the, those glasses where everything is, you're in that virtual
You mean
world.
Oculus,
Right.
The Oculus, yeah.
But I don't see me going there because that's not an interest of mine. And I still feel that what I'm doing won't go away either, because there's different kinds of learners.
Right.
Some learners can't use that virtual world because they get very sick and dizzy, and they can't handle that. So not everybody could do that anyways. But to start with your first question of where I see it going, I see the industry growing, and I see the instructional designers using more tools. So I can tell you for a fact that where I'm currently working, we're looking at an AI voiceover right now. And there's a really good reason why we're doing that. Because if something needs to be updated, and the person who created the training, because we do currently our own audio, so I'll do my own audio for my training. If I'm sick, or if I'm on vacation, or if I'm not at the company anymore, right? My voice is on that training, and they now have to fix something that's very challenging. So we're looking at an AI voiceover, because they're not as robotic sounding anymore. They used to be very robotic, which is why we didn't use them. But they have been so well fine-tuned that it sounds real. No,
yeah,
you can't tell.
I saw that video. I know what you're talking about, where they had Google and they were calling to get I think it was a hair appointment.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, that appointment isn't available. Just a minute, let me look. And
Yeah.
they make the sound of like tapping, and
Mhm.
it honest to goodness.
Yeah.
You are so all right. Right.
Yeah. So we are looking at things like that. But, and I just see the industry growing in other ways. I mean, you still need people to build these robots, maintain these robots, expand on what they can do. So intelligent people are needed still. It's not like, people are going to go away. We're still behind the scenes. We're kind of like Oz behind the curtain, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. When we are looking at the other sides of what that can be, virtual and augmented reality, we talked about that one, but also making it way more experiential. I've not seen this movie called Ready Player One. I'm going to have to watch it next weekend.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. But they've said that is really way more of what you could expect immersion to be like in a virtual world. And there's a lot of discussion about digital twins now, and making that work experience, or your office, you make a digital twin, so you would know how you're supposed to interact with people inside of that office, or replicating a scene where there's an earthquake and how everybody needs to be able to get out, and you can understand those things. Or maybe even conflict resolution, which you had mentioned earlier, and understanding again how to handle those scenarios.
The police department is doing that right now, actually.
Really,
yeah. The police department currently has a program where they are learning how to talk people down.
Oh gosh, I was thinking,
and it gives them responses too on everything, body language, their tone of voice. It's very cool.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
So all of those are training opportunities. So as an industry, I can see us being able to, you still have to create the script.
Yep.
You still have to create maybe the voiceover, but if you've got
Maybe
the
not.
AI, you still have to be able to maybe write the script for the voiceover, right? That sounds like a lot of possibilities there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm still going, well, what would it be after that? So that's the part where anything's possible if we think it,
Yes.
right? Kind of like what Walt Disney would say.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's a better experience, especially for adults, because they can do it on their own time when they need to. Before, it was so challenging if you were a single mom or whatever the case may be, to try and get classes in or do whatever. This can all be done in your home, right? So it's so much easier now to get education.
Just about every business I know has started their own academy. And you
Mhm.
mentioned some of the tools that you use. Do
Yeah.
they have their own academy set up with like some type of credentials or a certificate?
So you're talking about the storyline and the
Yeah.
rise. Okay, so that company Articulate, that you can get a certification in that
The
what-
use of the
yeah,
product?
yeah, of that system, that authoring tool is what we call them. So you can get that. There's other ones out there. There's Camtasia. There's other versions, but I only use Articulate. That seems to be the industry standard, which is where I want to be because that makes me more marketable. So yeah, you can get certified.
Okay. How long is that certification process? Do you know?
So it can take only 2 days if you
Whoa.
2 full days. If you just want to get a short kind of a certification through
Basically, the
organizations.
use of the product.
Yeah, just to prove that you know how to use it. I mean, it's very encompassing. Just like I said, think of PowerPoint, but on some major steroids. So it's just the high overview. But then you can take some longer courses that may take a few weeks or what have you. But they're certificate programs too. Let's not mix them up with getting a BA or something like that,
Right.
which would take you 2 years or whatever. But because we are currently in a employee market, so it is now, it's not the employer's world, it is an employee's world. Getting a certificate is going to be enough right now.
Oh, yeah.
So because employers they just need what they can get, and they'll take you without a degree. Which normally that wouldn't happen, right? Normally you'd have to have a degree.
Yeah. And typically I've seen 2-year degrees being enough to satisfy.
Yeah.
Because honestly, what I think the future of education is going to look like is you don't have to go to school for 4-year degrees, except if you want to be like a teacher, a lawyer, somebody in
Doctor.
engineering and healthcare.
Yeah.
And I mean like a doctor. Even nurses have 2-year degrees.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can go for a 4-year, but
Mhm.
for the most part, it's a 2-year degree. So anything that has to be a license.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you don't have to have a license for marketing. You don't have to have a license for management. So you
No.
can take, hands-on courses, get a
Exactly.
lot more internships.
Absolutely.
And then you should be able to get a job within a couple years. One of the goals that I have in my platform is to make 3 months equal to 1 year of experience.
Nice.
So really accelerating what that learning process is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was able to do that last summer. We did a skill study. I'm just sharing because I thought you'd like that information.
No,
too.
that's awesome. I mean, we've worked before together, and I have had your interns design things, and it's just really cool. And it gives them experience, and then they got something for their resume, and everybody's happy, and on we go.
Yeah. Yeah. We did work together for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So again, if we're looking at the industry, we've talked about it. And real quick, I'm going to pull up like a statistic I found for the learning industry. I'm going to say learning industry and 2030, because the amount of, it says $10 trillion. Like that is a lot of money. It's saying that the education market for learning, $10 trillion.
There are more jobs out there now than there ever was before for the learning and development, departments.
So I don't think you're going to be without a job at all.
No, I feel like I'm definitely in a position that is somewhat, I don't want to call it COVID free, but I'm resistant to a lot of things because no matter what, people need training. You're always going to need
Absolutely.
training. People come in, they're young and they're new, or people are changing jobs, or whatever the case is, there's always going to be training, and always has to be updated, right? Because things are always
it's
moving and
technology.
growing.
The pace of technology is moving so fast.
Yeah, we need to keep up.
Yeah. So with that in mind, that's why the value of certificates are there.
Yes.
But the other thing I think that's really important is having a well-rounded, we're going to go back to the holistic point of view. I think that employees need to be considering how they can help the overall organization. So I would
Yeah.
say making sure that they understand some business management, some accounting, some customer service to be more conversationally fluent with other departments and allow themselves to be cross-trained. I feel like that's going to be coming very,
Absolutely.
very soon.
And it's helpful anyways, because the more you understand, it makes your life easier in a company
Mhm.
anyways, because then you're not like, well, why is this happening? Or why is that happening? If you have a better understanding of why things are happening, it's easier to move forward. It's easier to get whatever needs to get done. Less
Mhm.
animosities.
So what do you think the future of what is it that you want to be going into as you move forward? Do you have another business you want to start, or do you have some different industry you want to try out? What is it that your future holds? Because you're young.
So
you're going to be like doing more. Doesn't matter. You had 30 years. Like I wouldn't have believed that, but that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah. So I want to reconnect with my tribe.
Mhm.
So I am missing that holistic kind of world that I was in and that I had created for myself before. So what I'd like to do is prepare myself my portfolio and get my certificate under my wing and do all those, little things that need to get done, and then put myself out there on LinkedIn and see what's out there. I mean, there's a lot of great companies that are doing things that are bettering people's minds and spirit. And that's what I want to be a part of.
What kind of certificate? You mentioned a certificate.
So I'm working on a master's instructional designer certificate.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a certificate, not a degree, because you're
Yeah,
saying a master's.
I know I said master, and we cannot confuse it. It just means I'm going to be a master instructional designer, meaning I reached
gotcha.
the skills.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
one that it's kind of like train the trainer. You're the one that's teaching others.
Right. And I'm actually doing it right now. So where I work, I currently am mentoring anybody new that comes in, and I sit with them and go through their first, course that they're doing, because you don't want to ever let anybody be on their own. And that helps me with my facilitation side, because then it keeps me tweaked with that skill. So, yeah.
Have you ever considered looking at the companies of these tools that you use, the authoring tools? I mean, you said, wait, what's the name of
So
Captiva or no?
So I use Articulate.
Articulate.
That's the one I'm most familiar with. And that's the one I currently am sticking with. There are others out there, but I don't see myself working for them, because that's not where I'm going. I mean, yes, I use their tool, but I'd rather work with someone like, Deepak Chopra.
Oh, wow.
I'd rather work for Chopra Global. Like that's where I'd be, or the Calm app, or, like I'm talking, I want to be working with my tribe.
Gotcha.
So,
Calm is out of Germany, I believe.
I'm not sure. I didn't know that.
One of my interns interned with that company, a previous intern, and he was telling me that's where his internship was. And he said they're out of Germany. Now, he was here in the United States and his internship was here. But I found that interesting that he was able to find a company globally that he could work with. And it was definitely something he was very, very interested in. Usually one of the things I tell people is look at all of the products you use and go look at their career page.
Yes.
And that's your best way to find a job, because you're already going to know the product.
Yes. And I think for me, going back to that word explorer, I can bring that back in again, because with what I'm doing, I don't need to be anywhere. I don't need to be in an office, right? If I want to go rent an Airbnb for a month, I can still do my job during the day, but then I'll have my nights and weekends to explore wherever I'm at. Italy, I don't know, Australia. Like I should be able to take my skill, work wherever I want. I could freelance, but I don't want to go down that path yet. I know I'm entrepreneurial, but I don't want to go down that path just yet.
So one of the companies that at one point in time I applied to work with them, it's called Remote Year. But these are the types of companies where a person, something, not an employee, you pay a fee and they set it up so that every month you're in a different country.
Wow.
And they put together it's kind of like a travel tour, honestly. They give you a place to stay. They give you a co-working space where you have good Wi-Fi. They set up, enjoyment trips that you can go and see the country.
Nice.
I think some of it comes with like food, and then, there's just a bunch of activities. Anyway, you can drop in at any point in time. But I looked at their website, and I'm pulling it up now just for the heck of it. They have an employment page, and I usually tell this to a lot of students because they find it very interesting. But yep, it's at the bottom of the page. So remote year, go look at it, because you get paid to travel the world, and you don't have to pay to be on the trip either.
Right.
So I'm just going to throw that one out there. But they have different places. Are you bilingual by chance?
I wish.
So you can choose any location that you want. Worldwide is the one that's obviously the easiest one, but they have different types of opportunities. There is a talent lead available, just so you know, full time, in case you're interested. And you could work remotely, and they would let you be anywhere in the world.
See, that would be my dream job right there. Work wherever I want.
Yeah, you'd be the explorer. You're testing everything out.
I'll still produce work.
Yeah. And you're managing all your people, just like what you're doing now. So I'm just telling you, talent lead, remote year. Remember that one.
Got it.
Yeah. Anyway, what is the best mentoring advice that you want to pass on to our listeners?
I would say never stop learning. I mean, never stop learning. Whatever industry you choose or wherever you want to go, keep gaining more information within that industry. And honestly, you will be in the right profession if you would be willing to do it without pay. If you're willing to do your job without getting paid, then you're doing the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you should just get enjoyment from that, because that's what work should be, right?
Yeah.
So I would say never stop learning. Don't lag behind, don't get complacent. Just learn, and keep learning.
That's good advice for sure. No matter how old you are, even if you retire, you should always keep learning.
Of course.
Because you have a phone and there's always going to be updates. So
well, and you also want to keep your brain active.
So, yeah, holistic. We're going back to that word. So how can our listeners contact you?
So because I am a little bit still redefining myself a little bit, I'm just going to use LinkedIn right now as my way of contact. So that's linkedin.com/IN/L as in Larry, F as in Frank, Smart, SMART. And then I'll put any updates and things on LinkedIn as I continue reinventing myself.
Very nice. Well, Birgitta, I want to tell you, thank you so much. It's just been delightful having you as a guest on the show.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure too.
And this is going to be airing, just so you know, we're in the end of May here, but this will be airing in July. So there's plenty of time for you to get that website, finalized and all of that good stuff.
Wonderful.
I think maybe not end of July. I think it's middle of July.
All right.
So you'll be able to find that, and we'll let you know when this episode is going to air.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you again. I want to thank our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios. Thank you to our production team and our video interns, Christian Flowers and Daniel Conti. Our music is by Sophie Lloyd. Remember, visit www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusion culture while skilling your people for the future of work. Thank you for supporting our show, and subscribe on any of your favorite podcast channels.